Hello and welcome back to George Past the Post. I want in this video to look at the topic of floor crossing in Parliament. So this is where an MP is elected from one political party and then during their term decides to switch to another. Now, most recently in Canada, there have been examples of MPs elected for the opposition Conservative Party and the NDP party, the New Democrats, switching after they've been elected to the governing Liberals. And in Canada, this is controversial because with each floor crossing to the Liberals, they slowly are inching their way towards a majority, not via a general election, but via floor crossings, and potentially if they win a number of by-elections that are coming up. And close to home in the UK, there have recently been examples of several MPs who were elected in 2024 as Conservative candidates but have defected subsequently to Reform UK. And if you go back to the 2016 to 19 period when Brexit dominated everything in British politics, you had lots of MPs from the Conservatives and Labour who defected, who either formed their own independent group. There was, in fact, the independent group. There are people who then joined the Liberal Democrats. There are people who just joined the Liberal Democrats. There was a lot of churn and people abandoning the party that they were elected from. Now, this is obviously controversial, and so I wanted to do this video because it's an interesting thing to explore. And there are obviously, arguments for or against. And then there's the question of, should there be should an MP who changed parties, should they have to resign their seat and cause a by-election? That's in countries that have constituency-based systems. And what would that rule look like? Should it be introduced? Would it potentially be a bad thing or a good thing? Now, the first thing I think to say is really that in countries that have a constituency-based system, so you have a constituency, you vote for a candidate, and the candidate with the most votes wins. There are other systems too. I'm going off topic as usual. I'm delving into my favourite topic of voting systems. This isn't the point, George. Stay with it. When you have a constituency-based system, obviously, when people vote, they are technically and actually they are voting for an individual. That person, they may be part of a political party, they may be allied to a particular party leader, but ultimately you are voting for a person. And so the argument goes, you vote for the person to use their independent judgment to vote and act in a way that they believe is in the best interest of their constituents. So you could argue that MPs, whatever their party label, they are independent free thinkers. Their mandate is a mandate from their constituents, and therefore if they believe that changing party may be advantageous to their constituents, then they should be free to do that. And ultimately, the way parliamentary democracy works is at the next election, it's for the voters to decide if they agree with that decision. But there's obviously a clear counter-argument to this, which is that while it is technically true that people vote for a person, and while it is true that, yes, for some people, they do vote based on the person, I think it's very fair to say that the majority of voters will vote for that person because of their party and or because of their party leader. So therefore, the reason that most MPs are elected is not because of their personal vote or personal following, but because of the party that they belong to. So for them to decide, for whatever reason, during the term of Parliament to switch parties without consulting their electorate is undemocratic. You could argue it is going against the will of the voters as expressed at the previous election. Hence the argument that if MPs do want to do that, and of course, if MPs don't want to be in a political party that they were elected in, of course, they shouldn't be forced to stay in a political party, but should they be required to hold a by-election? Now, there were examples in 2014 when there were two MPs who were elected as Conservatives in 2010, Douglas Carswell and Mark Reckless. Now, they both defected to UKIP, and they decided to resign their seats in Parliament and face by-elections. Now, as it happens, they both won the by-elections, but that's not the point. They decided to go back to their constituents and effectively ask them, "I've changed parties, do you endorse this decision?" But that was obviously voluntary, and since then, no one else has done it. Now, of course, you get party politics. The party that somebody is leaving, the party that the MP is defecting from, demands a by-election. The party that they're defecting to is saying, "Oh, no, there's no need for that." But I think the idea of having a by-election is worth exploring. As in, if an MP does choose to leave a party, then they should have to have a by-election. I think it's worth exploring, because I think, firstly, if you did have that, the biggest pro I can see is it would make MPs really think through their decision, and ultimately, are they prepared to put their money where their mouth is? Are they prepared to go back to their constituents and say, "I've made this decision. Do you endorse it or not?" And it would be a democratic thing to do. You could argue for voters to have to endorse this decision. On the flip side, you could argue if MPs had to have a by-election, then they may feel that they can't leave a party that they have decided they don't want to be in, and so you could argue it's unfair for MPs to be stuck in a party that they no longer wish to be in. And you could also argue it could be quite disruptive for the Parliament to have lots of by-elections all the time. But on the flip side, you could flip it around and say, well, at what cost to democracy? If that's the rule. I think it's worth. This is why I've done this video, because it's an interesting topic, and I've gone on about it for 7 minutes. Of course, one option, if you want to limit the chances of an MP defecting, would be perhaps move to a proportional system. But even in proportional systems, there have been examples of where, even if you're elected on a party list, there are MPs that then leave the party. There were examples when Britain was in the EU. The elections for MEPs were proportional, and you did have MEPs that would leave the party that they were elected for, with no, they didn't have to resign their seats or anything like that. But those are the arguments. I think there's merit to both sides. I'm not just it's uncomfortable for me sitting on this fence. I do think there is merit in requiring MPs to think through their decision, and whichever way you look at it, there are always pros and cons. I'm gonna come off this fence because it's getting uncomfortable. I do think that, given how important political parties are to MPs being elected, I think yes, if an MP wants to voluntarily sit as an independent or join another party, then there should be a requirement for within a few months for them to hold a by-election, because it's only fair to the voters. And if that means more by-elections, so be it. And that's my view, which has taken me 8 minutes to express. What do you think? Let me know what you think on this topic if you've made it this far. And hope you have a lovely evening, and goodbye.